Over a decade. That's how long it took Canada to finally procure the F-35 fighter jets from the United States. Political chaos, scandals, and government flip-flopping. This deal had it all. But after that, Canada finally locked it in, signing on the dotted line in January 2023. But here we are some 2 years later, and Canada seems to be having second thoughts. The first jet hasn't even touched Canadian soil, and yet Ottawa is eyeing an exit. And these are no whispers or political posturing. The country is actively looking for European replacements. This begs the question, what could have possibly gone wrong? And can Canada actually pull this off? Can it slap Washington right in the face and walk away? This video has all the answers. To understand how we got here, we must start with the deal itself. After years of political drama, Canada finally took the plunge in January 2023, signing a $13.3 billion contract for 88 F-35A fighter jets. This was supposed to be the end of a saga that had dragged on for far too long. Believe it or not, the official F-35 defense procurement process started back in 1997. That's before Google existed, before the first F-35 was even manufactured. So when it finally happened, everyone was excited. Minister of National Defence at the time, Anita Anand, called it the largest investment in Canada's Air Force in 3 decades. Officials promised modernised air power, close to 3,300 new jobs, and a $425 million boost to the economy. Canada's government was equally confident, insisting the F-35 was the best fighter jet for our country at the best price. The US was also thrilled. "Canada is our friend and a close ally," said US Air Force Lieutenant General Mike Schmidt. Lockheed Martin, the jet's manufacturer, gushed about strengthening Allied air power. On paper it all sounded perfect, but the truth, the deal was never smooth sailing. It started as a sole source agreement under Prime Minister Stephen Harper back in 2010, until it exploded into a political firestorm. Costs ballooned, oversight failures piled up, and critics labelled the procurement a fiasco. It got so bad that former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made cancelling the deal a campaign promise when he ran against Stephen Harper in 2015, and for a while he did just that. But somehow, despite all the scandals, the F-35 kept pulling Canada back in. By 2017, the government launched a new competition. By 2019, the bidding process was open. By 2021, it was down to just 2 contenders, the US-made F-35 and Sweden's Saab Gripen. Officials swore that if Lockheed Martin couldn't meet Canada's terms, they'd go with the Swedish alternative instead. As you can probably guess, Lockheed Martin did meet those terms, at least on paper. And so the deal was signed. The F-35s were officially in the pipeline, and Canada was all in. The first 16 jets have already been paid for, with delivery expected as early as 2026. If all goes according to plan, the full fleet of 88 will reach operational capability sometime between 2032 and 2034. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, if history was any indication, nothing about this deal was ever that simple. So no one was truly surprised when a new chapter in this turbulent history was opened. On March 14, 2025, just hours after Prime Minister Mark Carney took office, Defence Minister Bill Blair made an unexpected announcement. During a conversation with CBC, the Canadian public broadcaster, Blair revealed that Canada was now actively reconsidering the F-35 deal. "It was the fighter jet identified by our Air Force as the platform that they required, but we are also examining other alternatives," Blair stated, hinting that the F-35s might not be the only answer after all. He even floated the possibility of a mixed fleet, with European suppliers potentially stepping in to complete Canada's jet lineup. Blair was clear about one thing: the conversation about what's best for overall Canadian interests in the defence of the country is currently taking place within the military. But why the sudden change of heart? We'll get to that soon enough. For now, let's look at what the Canadian Defence Ministry has had to say on the matter after Blair's initial bombshell. As it turns out, the story might not be as dramatic as it seems at first glance. For now, at least. According to a spokesperson for Blair, Canada is not cancelling the F-35 contract, but needs to do its homework given the changing environment. Blair's office was also quick to clarify that Canada is still moving forward with its first 16 F-35s, but the rest of the multi-billion-dollar order is being actively re-evaluated. So it's not a cancellation, at least not yet. However, the Canadian government is definitely asking some tough questions. Now let's get to why those questions had to be asked in the first place. The answer primarily lies in the actions of one man: US President Donald Trump. Ever since he was sworn in for the second time, Trump's aggressive tactics have rattled all US allies. For months, Trump has been shaking up decades of foreign policy, but Canada felt the brunt of it. From high tariffs to threats of annexation, Trump's rhetoric has been particularly venomous towards his northern neighbor, a country that's been a reliable ally for years. Now, Canada was already aware that it relied on the US too much. The country's entire defense strategy was built on this reliance. But here's the thing. Relying on the US was somewhat acceptable when the US was actually reliable, but those days feel like a distant memory now. For years, Canada spent about 80% of its defense budget on American weapons, cementing the idea that the US would be the central pillar of Canada's security. But now, with the US wavering on its international commitments, particularly to NATO, Canada is facing an uncomfortable truth. It can no longer afford to be so heavily dependent on its southern neighbor. In a bold move, Prime Minister Carney made it clear that this reliance must end. It's clear that our security relationship is too focused on the United States. We must diversify, he told reporters during a visit to London. Yes, in London. His first official visit after taking office wasn't to the US but to European allies, and this move alone speaks volumes. But it's not just about diversifying from the US in terms of defense spending, it's about value for money. With Canada's defense budget hovering around $22 billion annually, and the country being urged to meet NATO's target of 2% of GDP for defense spending, the pressure is on. Trudeau's update on defense spending pledged an extra $5.6 billion over 5 years and $50.6 billion more over the next 20 years. This will go towards bolstering Canada's ability to defend the 1.7 million square miles of its Arctic territory and meet the growing threats from Russia and China. However, the fact remains, this strategic shift isn't just a matter of new equipment, it's about re-evaluating where Canada places its trust. And the supposed existence of a kill switch in the F-35s does nothing to build up that trust. If anything, it only amplifies the fear that Canada's reliance on the US for critical maintenance and software updates could leave its fleet vulnerable in the event of a diplomatic fallout. While the US government and Lockheed Martin have firmly denied the existence of such a switch, stating that there is no kill switch, and reassuring that the F-35 operates under well-established agreements, there's still a lingering unease. The reality is, even without a literal button to disable the jets, the US holds a powerful leverage over the operational capability of Canada's F-35s. As Stacey Pettyjohn, a defense expert, explained, the F-35 relies heavily on continuous software updates, spare parts, and maintainers from the US. Without these, the aircraft could technically still fly, but they would be much more susceptible to being rendered ineffective. And the current political climate only amplifies this vulnerability. The idea that Washington could sever these vital support systems at a whim, either due to shifting alliances or a breakdown in relations, has made many in Canada wary of the potential risks. The fear isn't just about a physical kill switch, but the broader possibility that the US might cut off critical resources and leave Canada's fleet of F-35s stranded. So the infamous kill switch may be a myth, but the underlying concerns about dependency on the US remain very real. Now that we've explored why Canada is reconsidering its commitment to the F-35, the next logical question is, can Canada even exit the deal? After all, a contract was signed, and if it can, what viable alternatives exist for replacing the F-35? First off, Canada has already paid for the first 16 aircraft, as we already mentioned, so pulling out of the deal would almost certainly come with significant financial penalties. The exact costs are unclear, but they could be steep, especially given the country's long history of investment in the program. However, these penalties could turn out to be the least of Canada's worries. After all, Canada's aerospace sector is deeply embedded in the F-35 supply chain. Between 1997 and 2021, Canada contributed approximately $500 million to the F-35 program, which enabled Canadian companies to secure over $1.8 billion in related contracts. A withdrawal could jeopardize future contracts and affect the Canadian economy in unexpected ways. This sentiment was echoed by Bombardier, one of Canada's largest aerospace companies, which has deep ties to the US defense and manufacturing sectors. Bombardier's CEO, Éric Martel, voiced concerns about the potential fallout for the company if Canada cancels its F-35 deal. The company holds a couple of lucrative contracts with the Pentagon, including deals for specialized communication aircraft and surveillance planes. Martel warned that pulling out of the F-35 deal might trigger retaliatory actions from the US government, potentially targeting Bombardier's own US-based contracts. With more than 60% of its business tied to the US market, the company is highly vulnerable to the repercussions of a strained trade relationship. Beyond the threats of tariffs, Bombardier's operations rely heavily on the US supply chain. The company manufactures key components of its jets in the US, from wings in Texas to avionics in Iowa and engines in Indiana. In total, Bombardier relies on 2,800 US-based suppliers across 47 states. As a result, US-made parts account for more than half of the total cost of Bombardier's aircraft. If Canada were to exit the F-35 deal, this could severely disrupt this intricate supply chain, further damaging Bombardier's bottom line. Then there's the issue of Canada's defense relationships and its overall security. It's easy to understand the desire to distance Canada from a partner like the US, especially in light of the volatile political climate under Trump. But defense policy experts warn that putting those concerns ahead of Canada's collective defense responsibilities could prove detrimental in the long run. Richard Shimuka, a senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, argues that turning away from the F-35 and its benefits could undermine Canada's security interests and modern military capabilities. This is cutting off our nose to spite our face, he said. However, a large part of these concerns, at least the security ones, could be mitigated if Canada were able to find a viable alternative to the F-35. So let's take a closer look at the European fighters Canada is considering and see if any of them are ready to fill the F-35 boots, or wings, we should say. When Canada started exploring alternatives to the F-35, one fighter jet quickly resurfaced as a major contender, the Saab Gripen E. Why? Because this jet came close to winning the F-35 contract in the first place. It was the Canadian government's second choice. One look at its capabilities makes it obvious why. The Gripen E is the embodiment of next-gen air superiority. This multi-role beast promises to deliver a highly advanced fighter jet capable of performing air-to-air, air-to-surface, and reconnaissance missions. Let's talk numbers. The Gripen E is powered by the GE F414G engine, boasting a max thrust of 98 kilonewtons, giving it the muscle it needs for high-speed, high-performance missions. It's got a wingspan of 28 feet and a length of 50 feet, but it packs a punch beyond its size. It has 10 hardpoints, more than enough for its impressive arsenal, and can carry up to 7 Meteor Beyond Visual Range air-to-air missiles, plus 2 Iris-T missiles for good measure. We're talking about air dominance, where this plane can outsmart and outrun most adversaries before they even know what hit them. The best part, the Gripen E is practically made for Canada's climate. Saab has been vocal about this, saying their fighter is the fastest and best for Canada's air defense needs. So what's the issue? Well, apart from the Gripen E not being able to match the F-35's stealth and sensor fusion, Saab's relationship with the US might be a huge issue. You see, the Gripen E is packed with US parts, starting with the engine, and this reliance could mean trouble. It means the US has the power to veto sales of the Gripen if it deems the export of these parts a national security concern. Saab, for its part, isn't giving up. The company's offer to assemble Gripens in Canada and transfer intellectual property makes it an incredibly appealing option. However, it's unclear whether the political and economic costs of crossing the US will outweigh the benefits of a more independent defense option. Another one of those options is the French Dassault Rafale, a sleek and versatile fighter. This twin-engine, multi-role aircraft is no stranger to battle, having been combat-proven since 2007 and serving not only in the French Air Force but also in numerous other countries like Egypt, India, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. The Rafale is capable of conducting a wide array of missions, from air superiority and defense to close air support, reconnaissance, anti-ship strikes, and even nuclear deterrence. Its ability to perform diverse roles with ease makes it a formidable contender in the skies. The Rafale's specifications are also impressive, with a max takeoff weight of 27 tons and the capacity to carry up to 10.5 tons of external load. Its wingspan of 37.76 feet and length of 50 feet are paired with a max speed of Mach 1.8, giving it impressive agility and speed in combat. Additionally, the Rafale is equipped with 2 engines producing 8.3 tons of thrust each, ensuring that it can stay nimble and capable under intense combat conditions. But these engines are an issue again. This time not because they're manufactured in the US, but because they, along with the Rafale's radar and electronic warfare systems, are largely incompatible with the Royal Canadian Air Force's existing platforms and support infrastructure. This technological gap raises serious concerns about interoperability with NATO and, more specifically, with the US, given Canada's commitment to NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command. It seems that Dassault knew this too, which is why it withdrew from Canada's fighter jet competition in 2018. The Rafale's appeal, however, shouldn't be dismissed outright. Despite the heavy reliance on French-made components, it has the least amount of American content compared to other contenders like the Gripen. This could be seen as an advantage in terms of avoiding potential US vetoes. The third best alternative, the Eurofighter Typhoon, also doesn't rely on critical American-made parts. Instead, this jet is a true testament to European collaboration. Built by a consortium of Airbus, BAE Systems, and Leonardo, the Typhoon combines the best of 4 European nations: the United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, and Spain. This multi-role fighter is designed to meet a wide range of mission requirements, including air superiority, ground attack, and reconnaissance. The best part, it can seamlessly switch between roles depending on mission needs, making it an incredibly versatile player in the sky. One of the Typhoon's most impressive features is its Eurojet EJ200 engine, a marvel of engineering that propels this aircraft to a max speed of Mach 2 at high altitude and 1.25 Mach at sea level. With 90 kilonewtons of thrust per engine, this engine provides the aircraft with an extraordinary thrust-to-weight ratio, giving it the edge in both maneuverability and acceleration. In fact, the Typhoon is so agile that it regularly outclasses its competitors in performance evaluations. Whether it's slicing through the sky at 1,550 miles per hour or engaging in close combat at lower speeds, the Typhoon excels in both high-speed intercepts and dogfights. But despite its remarkable capabilities, the Typhoon faces some of the same hurdles in securing the Canadian contract. The main issue lies in the interoperability with Canada's existing defense infrastructure, again. Now, if multiple F-35 alternatives have issues working with Canada's infrastructure, why doesn't the country just build jets that will fit right in? Well, domestic production of a new fighter jet in Canada has indeed been discussed, and this idea sounds appealing at first. After all, what better way to secure national defense than by creating homegrown aircraft? However, this is easier said than done. Much easier. According to Shimuka, creating a Canadian fighter jet that would meet integration requirements could take years. This means that the first aircraft wouldn't be ready until well after Trump's presidency ends in 2029. But it's not just about timing, it's also about effectiveness. Shimuka points out that Canada, with its relatively smaller military, has to rely heavily on partnerships with larger allies to ensure operational effectiveness. And yes, this still includes the US. In other words, Canada might not be able to even design a jet from scratch that could play nice with NATO systems. By now, it's becoming increasingly clear that the F-35 is looking more and more irreplaceable, kind of like that one tool you don't realize you need until you've tried everything else and nothing quite fits. But what about Lockheed Martin? Is the company using this fact to its favor? Absolutely. In a statement regarding the developing situation with Canada, the company made sure to remind everyone just how indispensable the F-35 is. Lockheed Martin described the F-35 as the most advanced, survivable, and connected fighter aircraft in the world, enabling 21st century security and allied deterrence. It's a classic move. While Canada weighs its options, Lockheed is subtly saying, look, we've got the goods and we're here to stay. But the company isn't relying on words alone while Canada is looking for ways to leave it in the dust. Lockheed Martin is also making moves, and fast. In response to Canada's mounting doubts, Lockheed Martin has reportedly made a new offer to the country. According to sources cited by the Globe and Mail, a Canadian newspaper, the company is promising to create more jobs within Canada in exchange for the country's continued commitment to purchasing the entire fleet of 88 F-35A fighters. If these reports hold true, Lockheed's move appears to be a targeted attempt to leverage Canada's defense procurement strategy, which places significant emphasis on using defense deals as a way to stimulate economic growth and generate skilled jobs. By offering to contribute to job creation in Canada, Lockheed Martin is positioning itself to appeal to both the economic and security interests of the Canadian government. But let's be honest, Lockheed Martin isn't solely fighting for Canada's contract, it's also fighting for its future. The company's stock recently dropped by 6.69% following Trump's decision to award Boeing the $20 billion contract for the development of the F-47, the US military's next-gen fighter. So Lockheed Martin can't exactly afford to lose out on valuable international defense agreements, especially when there are fears that Canada could inspire other NATO countries to follow suit, leading to broader consequences for the F-35's global market share. Portugal has already decided to reconsider its purchase of the F-35s, though the country announced it before Canada did. However, given the larger trend of European nations increasingly seeking to bolster their own defense industries, other NATO members could easily start pulling back from the F-35 program. For now, nations like the Netherlands and Norway continue to back this program, reinforcing its strategic value as a tool for NATO interoperability. The Czech Republic even inked a recent deal to acquire 24 F-35s, marking a significant commitment to the program. However, it's still clear that the future of the F-35 will be influenced by more than just the capabilities of the aircraft itself. But remember, these capabilities are truly unmatched. That's also why Canada chose the F-35 in the first place. The jet's stealth capabilities, sensor integration, and advanced technology are crucial for defending the country's vast and challenging northern borders. While European jets can certainly hold their ground in many areas, they don't offer the same level of stealth and interoperability that the F-35 does, especially in high-stakes situations involving US partners. This leaves the Canadian government caught between nationalist sentiments and security needs. Which side will prevail? What do you think? Sound off in the comments section below. Now go and check out Trump Never Saw This Coming. Canada just blocked US access to Alaska, or click this other video instead.